Welcome back to the City Current Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference, empowering the good. And we love talking about food, nourishment, community, and so much more. We're honored to be joined by Elizabeth Langgle-Martin. She is the Community Engagement Manager at the Nashville Food Project. How are you doing?
I am doing great. It is a blustery, rainy day. I'm just feeling really happy to be here.
Well, you do tremendous good on a lot of fronts when you talk about growing and gardening and cooking and kitchens and then community and sharing. And so we have a lot to unpack, but let's start with a little bit of history. Give us some history and some context for the nonprofit.
Sure. The Nashville Food Project kind of operates around this desire to work towards a vision where everyone in Nashville has access to the food that they want and they need through a just and sustainable food system. And we do that through the growing and cooking and sharing. But that mission and that vision has kind of evolved over the past 11 years. So we started out as a very kind of grassroots, small organization that was doing a lot of direct food distribution. And as we grew, we kind of found our niche and kind of found how interdependence was so important in our work. And so we started to shift our model to really rely on deep community connections and interdependence. And that's where we are today. And so we're still learning, still growing, and still grateful to be a part of a very interdependent Nashville scene.
Talk about why what you do is so important. I mean, nourishment, obviously, food access. But when you talk about those in our community who don't have access, it's a big number.
It is a big number. I think we, as Americans, live in this weird juxtaposition of the things that are going on in our food system. And it, like most things, disproportionately affects folks who are low income, who are a part of a historically marginalized population. And so we see those folks on the front line of the impacts of this really unjust food system. And so we know that 40% of all food that's produced in the US ends up in a landfill, which is a huge number, almost half. But right now in Tennessee, we know around 1 in 8 folks is experiencing food insecurity. And so for our purposes, we're talking about food insecurity as not consistently feeling confident that you know where your food's coming from, maybe skipping meals to make things stretch, or not having access to the quality food that it lets you support a healthy, active lifestyle. And people's experience of what food security looks like might vary from family to family or culture to culture. But we want people to have power in their own food ways and the ways that they obtain and prepare and cook and enjoy food with their families, because we know that food is this thing that is reflective of our identities. It's reflective of our cultures and our upbringing. And it's one of the ways that we connect with people and celebrate. And so we recognize that there's this weird juxtaposition of this excess of food in our food system and an over-industrialized food system, but a lack of access to land for agricultural purposes, a lack of choice and quality food that's available to the average or a lower income consumer. And so all of our work kind of touches on these different parts of a broken food system or an unjust food system and tries to push back and in creating together with others the kind of city we want to live in.
Let's start with kind of where it starts on your end in terms of the gardens and also the recovery. And so you kind of play on both ends of the spectrum there. Talk about how many gardens and how it works, as well as the recovery.
Yeah, and 2 essential parts. So we have an extensive urban agricultural program, and our gardens are really spaces for connection. So we're hoping to connect people to each other, to their neighbor, and to the community. We're hoping that people connect with the earth and the ecosystem that they're a part of. And that people continue to be able to connect with different traditions of food cultivation for the purposes of making sure that their family has food that they want and need. And so we have 3 urban agricultural spaces, a small community garden in North Nashville in collaboration with Magruder Family Resource Center, and about 20 families grow with us in that space. We have a 1-acre farm that we lease off of Haywood Lane. That's the site of our incredible Growing Together program. And that program supports the professional or the market growing of 6 farmers who entered into the U.S. as refugees from Burma and Bhutan and brought incredible agricultural skill. And they actually sell they grow to sell in that space. And so they cultivate a lot of incredibly just beautiful food, and are able to like introduce that food to our neighbors and our food scene and our restaurant scene, and also become advocates and kind of like collaborators in food access work in their own communities. And then we work with Metro Parks, and we have a 3-acre farm, which is currently 3 acres, on the newest Metro Parks land, which is Mill Ridge in Antioch. We've been growing in that space for 4 years, and right now we have about 80 families that grow with us there. So we have a portion of the farm that's like individual plots where people have a lot of autonomy over what they're growing. And then we have a communal part of the farm for folks who want to be engaged in more communal growing. And so that's kind of some of the parts of our agriculture. We spend a lot of time with language access and doing shared learning and skill sharing and celebrating different traditions of growing food and sharing food and the stories that go along with that. And just creating spaces for people that feel like home. And then you mentioned recovery. We know that 40% of food goes to waste. And what that means is that hunger is not a scarcity issue, which is mind blowing, because I think sometimes the narrative we're told is that, well, if we just produce more food in any way possible, we can address hunger. And what we see is that that's not true. It's not the overproduction of food that's the issue. It's the ways that the barriers that are keeping people hungry, the systems that are keeping people hungry. And so we, as a small way that we push back against that and work with some of our local food producers and retailers, is that we work with grocery stores, farms, and restaurants to anticipate when they're going to have excess. And then we intercept that excess while it's still good and usable, and quickly incorporate it as ingredients into meals so that we can kind of leverage food that's already in our community to meet the needs of our neighbors.
And that takes us to phase 2, which is the cooking in the kitchens. And so
Yeah.
talk about the kitchens and that piece of putting the meals together.
Yeah. And I think when people first hear about the food project, it's very likely that they've heard of our meals program. Because a lot of people go to meals or food or cooking when they hear the Nashville Food Project. But we operate 2 commercial kitchens for our community meals program. And part of that is leveraging resources that are already in our community through our recovery program, but then also sourcing food in other ways as well, and crafting from scratch meals in our 2 commercial kitchens. Out of those 2 kitchens, we're cooking about 6,000, between 5,000 and 6,000 meals a week, depending on the season. And all of those meals are served in partnership with other justice impacting work that's happening in our city. So we don't do a lot of direct food distribution. What we do is leverage our expertise in food to support other really impactful community work that's happening. So that might look like after school programs. It might look on Meals on Wheels programs or senior delivery programs. It might look at our meals might be served alongside a training program or a GED class. So basically working with community leaders that have a deep investment and knowledge of their own context, and pulling in this resource of high quality food to be able to make that available as a part of those programs.
And that really is phase 3, which is community and sharing and being a part of bringing people together, correct?
That's right. Yeah. I think that when we talk about systems or needing to shift systems, those are things that, the Nashville Food Project can't do by itself. No one entity or person can. But in collaborative and interdependent work, when we kind of recognize that our liberation is bound up with that of others, we are able to move things towards a place of a more just city.
When you look at pulling all these pieces together, obviously volunteers play a vital role,
Yeah.
financial contributions, supporting your efforts. Talk about the different ways the community can plug into what you're doing, including you've got some social enterprises as well.
Yeah, we do. So there's lots of ways that the community connects, and it's so incredible to see each person bring their own talents and giftings in what they can contribute. So for instance, we have a gentleman named John Potter, who is a wonderful knife sharpener, which is a skill that he has and his way that he can invest in this communal work. And so you can find him at the Richland Park Farmers Market, but once a week he's here in our kitchen sharpening all of our knives as a volunteer service to us, to make sure that our volunteers and our team have sharp knives to work with. And so just one kind of like snapshot of someone taking the skills and their piece of the work and using it to invest in this idea of community food security. But we have volunteer opportunities that are listed on our website for folks to engage in the kitchens to help us break down some of that recovered food into usable ingredients so it's easily incorporated into meals. We have sessions at our gardens to help maintain the infrastructure of the sites and the health of the soil. Of course, like you mentioned, we have folks who invest in our work financially that say, like, I see the kind of city you're working towards, and I want to leverage my resources to be a part of creating that. And then we have fun, different ways that people can engage throughout the year, different events. We have simmer dinners, which are like really intimate chef dinners that people come and are a part of, and their ticket price goes to support our work, and they get a really unique look at a local chef. And so there's a lot of elements like that, and those are each featured on our website. And so there's lots of cool stuff to get into there.
Talk about impact, because when you look
Yeah.
at the numbers, it's substantial. I mean, you're talking over 230,000 meals shared, over 200,000 pounds of food. So you're talking some big numbers here. Give us an idea of kind of what success metrics you all look at, kind of talk about some of the numbers that put a smile on your face.
Yeah, I think that I love looking at the numbers at the end of the year. We do an annual report that'll be out probably towards the beginning of next year for this year's impact. And I love looking at those numbers. I think what's even more exciting to me is the stories that come out of that, that show the way that all of these different efforts can exist alongside each other for the creation of really deep community impact and relationship. So if you have time, there's a story I'd love to share with you. So I mentioned our Growing Together program, where we have 6 farmers from Burma and Bhutan growing incredible food, running their CSA, running their own CSA, selling to restaurants, and then also helping us as collaborators in food access work. And as a part of that program, a long part of that community, we have an incredible interpreter, community leader, and a member of the Burmese community, and her name is Lulu. And so I don't know if you remember how you felt at the beginning of COVID. Everything was unknown and chaos, and there was job sites shutting down. People weren't sure about how it spread. There was a lot of fear, and that was amplified in our immigrant and refugee communities and for our immigrant and refugee neighbors. And so we had Lulu, who had a deep relationship with us, a relationship with the farmers, and also a deep connections in the Burmese community. And she imagined a new way, and the ways that we could kind of broker together this produce that the Growing Together farmers were selling. And suddenly there was less places, less restaurants for it to go to at the very beginning of COVID. But then she also saw Burmese families being unequally affected by job loss and alienation and just feeling isolated. And these were culturally appropriate foods that were an incredible match for their families. And so she came to the Food Project and asked if we could be collaborators in making sure we were brokering that food that was grown in the Burmese community to meet the needs of folks that were very, very tangible at that moment in this global pandemic. And so we've worked with Lulu to deliver hundreds and hundreds of pounds of fresh produce to folks' front doors through a network of Burmese volunteers that she's organized within their own community. And the Food Project has been able to leverage our resources to purchase from the Growing Together farmers, and families are getting culturally appropriate produce. And that has helped us imagine in some new ways, the ways that our work could look. And I think that our best stories are when we are really not about us. They're about like deep community connection and leaders who come to us with an idea and say, this is what my community needs. And we're able to be responsive to that. So that story kind of really gets me excited about how we could imagine a different world together.
Absolutely. Give me one more thing that you wish everyone knew about the Nashville Food Project.
I think really just that some of our most impactful work happens through connections and happens through personal relationships. So some of our deepest friendships and our deepest allyships or because someone said, you know what, you really need to talk to this farmer who's doing this, or I can connect you to this grocery store, or, there's someone who is really looking to donate to work that's impactful in our city. And so our human connections, there's nothing that can replace human connections, especially when working towards kind of a common goal. And so I am excited for folks to continue to connect with us and be a part of this communal work.
Which leads us to the last question is, how do we connect? Where do we go? So talk about website, contact information. Where do we go to learn more and get involved with the Nashville Food Project?
So the NashvilleFoodProject.org. But we do a lot of storytelling on our Instagram, also under the Nashville Food Project, and through our Facebook. We also have a newsletter list, like most organizations, where you can get updates and stories about our work and get invited into events. So we encourage folks to find us on social and to kind of follow along and see what's happening behind the scenes and as a part of our work, and find their place to plug in.
Nice. Elizabeth, thank you for all you and your amazing team do. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. Have a great day.